What is going on, y'all? This is Pay Me in Dividends, and today is January 11th, 2025. Now, this time, we're going to jump right into the video because it is Saturday and the market is closed, and my position has remained the same. I still have the same amount of shares of AIPI, MSTY, RDTE, and NVDY. What I want to do in this video is I want to compare Kurv ETFs versus YieldMax ETFs. Now, if you're not familiar with Kurv ETFs, they are an ETF manager and they provide a suite of funds that run options off of big companies. Now, you have AMZP, which is Amazon. You have an Apple option strategy. You have a Google option strategy, Microsoft, Netflix, and Tesla. Now, one thing I want to do before I begin comparing these ETFs to YieldMax is the first thing I want to say is I do like Kurv ETFs. My only concern is the low assets under management. I'm not sure if they show it on their actual website, but you can look them up on like ETF.com and whatnot, and you can see that each of these individual ETFs are under 10 million in assets under management, which is very low, right? That's a very low volume compared to YieldMax ETFs like NVDY or even MSTY that both have over $1 billion in assets under management, which means that these ETFs are more liquid. There's more money in these ETFs, meaning that you can trade in and out of them a lot easier. And so for that exact reason is why I have not invested into Kurv ETFs as just yet. But I do like Kurv ETFs. I do like their performance as far as some of these. And so I want to compare them to the YieldMax version just to give you guys an idea of some other ETFs that you can put on your watch list and possibly invest into the future. Once the assets under management increase in these Kurv ETFs, I probably will invest in one or two of these. But as of now, they're on my watch list, but I do want to compare them to the YieldMax version. So the first one we're going to look at is the Amazon option from Kurv ETF and YieldMax. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this website here, dividendchannel.com, and you're able to see the total return of these ETFs since inception. So the first one we're going to look at is AMZP versus AMZY, right? Kurv ETF versus YieldMax, the Amazon version. Now, here we can see they have had pretty similar returns, right? 48% total return on both of these as of October of 2023. So again, these ETFs have not been out for a very long time. So we're just going off of the data that we have available to us. So as of October 2023, they have both returned 48%. Now, this is with dividends reinvested, and this is assuming a hypothetical $10,000 investment. Now, without dividends reinvested, we can see AMZP, which is the Kurv ETF option of Amazon, has actually returned about 5% more than the YieldMax version. So if you did reinvest the dividends, it's about the same. If you didn't invest the dividends, the Kurv ETF version actually outperformed the YieldMax version, basically meaning that the share price has been a lot more stable than the YieldMax share price. And we can see that here, right? We can see the starting share price for AMZP is $25 as of October 2023. And as of January 10th, 2025, it has risen $7 to $32 a share. We can see that AMZY YieldMax option ETF from Amazon has actually decreased in price. So let's say you did not reinvest your dividends, you would have grown your money more in AMZY ZP. So for this one, we're going to give this one to the Kurv ETF. So we'll go ahead and highlight this one green just to see which one is the winner between the two. Now we're going to move on to the Apple option ETF of Kurv versus YieldMax. So we're going to go AAPY versus APLY. And let's see who wins between these two. So it looks like ALPY has actually outperformed AAPY. So it looks like YieldMax is actually outperformed as far as the Apple income strategy on this one. So this one is up 27% as of October 2023, and the Kurv version is up 17% as of 2023. And again, this top chart is assuming that you reinvested your dividends, and this bottom chart is assuming that you did not reinvest your dividends. So down here, we can see that the YieldMax version is still the winner, right? It is up 23% since inception, and the Kurv ETF version is up 16% since inception. But one thing I want you guys to notice is the share price, right? AAPY has remained stable at about $25. It actually went up almost $1 here. We can see, right? $25.01 to $25.95. And the YieldMax version actually went down almost $1. So that's just something to keep in mind if you are worried about capital preservation. This is an income channel. We are trying to generate income, but we also don't want to lose our principal either. But for this one, we're going to give it to YieldMax because we're looking at total return just for this scenario. So the YieldMax version, we'll go ahead and highlight this one green, and we'll give it to YieldMax. Now we're going to move to Google, right? We have Goop, G-O-O-P from Kurv, and we have GUI, or G-O-O-Y, from YieldMax. So we'll go ahead and take a look at these and see who the winner is, right? So this one, there's a big difference here, right? We can see there's a big difference. The chart is quite similar as far as the movement, but there is a big separation here. So we can see that Goop, G-O-O-P, from Kurv ETFs is actually outperformed the YieldMax version, right? It's up 37% as of October 2023, and GUI is up 16% as of 2023 with dividends reinvested. And again, if you notice the share price, right, Goop started off at $24 a share, and it is now $30 a share as of January 10th, 2025. And if we go over here to the YieldMax version, we can see that the share price has actually decreased $4, right? So most of this return, or all of this return, has been through dividends and not capital appreciation. So again, just something to keep in mind. So we will give this one to Goop from Kurv ETFs, and we will move on to Microsoft. So MSFY from Kurv and MSFO from YieldMax. So let's take a look at these, and let's see who is the winner between these two. So MSFO looks like they're going to take this one from YieldMax. Total return as of October 2023 is 19%, and for MSFY from Kurv, total return is 14%. But again, I want you guys to see the stability of this share price, right? There's not much movement here. The Kurv ETF MSFY has remained at about $25, where the YieldMax version has dropped from $21 to $17. So that right there tells you that MSFO from YieldMax obviously pays a higher dividend yield because they were still able to outperform MSFY, but you lost some of your principal during that timeline. So again, just something to keep in mind. Now, I want to move on to the next one, NFLP and NFLY. And let's see how these stack up against each other. NFLY. So for this one, it looks like the YieldMax version comes on top again, right? Total return 69%. And for the Kurv ETF Netflix option strategy, 57%. Again, just like the last couple, the share price for the Kurv ETF has actually appreciated in value during this time, whereas the YieldMax ETF has remained stable for the most part. Looks like it dropped down almost $1, but has remained somewhat stable. So most of this return here, right, is mostly dividends that we can see from this chart. So total return wise, it did outperform NFLP, but if you look at the share price for NFLP has actually appreciated in value. Now we're going to do the last one, and then we're going to move on to the next thing I want to talk about in this video. So MSFY, I believe the YieldMax version was up on this one and this one as well. Let's go back on this, and we will highlight both of these green, and then we will move on to the Tesla option strategy, which I think is the one that people are more familiar with here and probably interested to see a head-to-head comparison on. So we'll go TSLP, and we will do Tesla from YieldMax. So look at this chart. This chart is wild. I don't even understand. But all right, so TSLP and TSLY. So TSLP has actually outperformed TSLY, right? TSLP has outperformed Tesla from YieldMax. So assuming dividends reinvested, TSLP has returned 55%, and Tesla has returned 44%. Now, one thing I want you guys to keep in mind is not only that TSLP share price has appreciated and TSLY share price has depreciated, but also in the midst of this, Tesla actually had a reverse stock split, meaning that, you know, when companies do a stock split because the stock goes so high, almost like Nvidia had a stock split last year. The share price had gone over $1,000. I believe they did a 10-for-1 split, and it dropped down to about $120 a share. Typically, the reason companies do that is to encourage more money to flow into that particular stock, whether it's retail investors like you and I or institutional investors. It just makes it a bit more affordable for the regular person to buy shares of their company, although you still get the same percentage of equity. But in this case, Tesla did a reverse split. So the share price had gone down so much that they had to increase the price of each share in order to not get delisted from the stock exchange. So in my opinion, that's not a good sign. That's not something that I personally would invest into. But as we can see, total return wise, it's still up since inception. So I'll let you make the decision. I just want to give you guys the information, make you guys aware of the investments that are out there, and then you go and do your due diligence, do your research, and you make the decision based on what you want to invest your money in, right? So with that said, we can see that TSLP has outperformed Tesla. And another thing I want to show you guys, right, is the distribution for Kurv ETFs. If you'll notice here that it's still high yield, but they're a lot lower than some of these yield max ETFs, right? The Amazon version is at 27%. The Apple version is at 75%. The Google version at 19%, Microsoft at 18%, Netflix at 36%, and the Tesla version at 50%. So again, they're still high yield, but it seems like they're still preserving the capital, and so your share price is not going down over time. It's actually going up over time, or at the very minimum remaining stable. So this is really what I wanted to show you guys, is just give you guys a head-to-head lineup of Kurv ETFs versus yield max ETFs, just to give you guys an indication of what is out there on the market. Now, one more thing I want to talk about, because I've seen people making comments and asking questions in the comments whether or not these ETFs are safe. Listen, this is my take on it. Not all ETFs are created equal, and if we're talking about investments in general, not all investments are created equal, right? So I would encourage you to do your research, do your due diligence, and more importantly, understand how these funds operate. These are not traditional investments. This is not a traditional ETF like VOO or QQQ, which are both great investments, and I would encourage you to have those type of investments in a retirement account. But these investments specifically for this portfolio is about generating income. Now, there are also some very, very terrible high yield ETFs that make you lose principal or capital appreciation over time. And in my opinion, any amount of dividends that are paid does not make up for that over time. Now, there are also some great ETFs that appreciate in value over time as far as share price, and they pay you out a very, very big dividend. But I think the point that I'm trying to make is the strategy that these ETFs use are very different from your traditional ETFs, right? A lot of these ETF managers don't hold the actual underlying asset, or they only hold a small percentage of it. And what they're doing is they're performing options. They're extracting the premium from those options, and then they're paying you out a dividend. So this is all about cash flow, right? This is a lot different than your traditional index funds or mutual funds. So when I see the question, are these ETFs safe? Well, that's a very vague question, because some of them are, some of them are not. And the only data we have to base our decision off of is the historical performance, which a lot of these ETFs are very new. They were just created within the last 2 to 5 years. And so all we can do is base our decision off of historical performance, total return during that timeline, and what is the underlying asset. This is something that I've spoke about in previous videos as well. Are they extracting income by performing options on the S&P, or doing options on the NASDAQ, or an underlying company like MicroStrategy or NVIDIA? It all depends. All of these ETFs are created differently. None of them are equal. And so when you're considering investing into these ETFs, you have to do your research. You have to do your due diligence before you come to a conclusion. So I hope this makes sense. You guys let me know in the comments. What do you think? Do you think Kurv ETFs is a good investment? Is it something that you're considering, or is it even something that you're already invested in? Let me know in the comments, guys. As always, I appreciate you guys stopping by the channel, and I will check y'all out in the next video.